She thought he was just another rich man her grandmother forced her to meet. So she did what she always did. She insulted him. She mocked his suit, his accent, his money. What Keisha didn't know was the man sitting across from her wasn't just any man. He was Park Min-hyuk, the most dangerous Korean mafia boss in the city, and their meeting was never supposed to happen. Welcome back, my wonderful viewers. Thank you for watching. And don't forget to comment where you are watching from. The upscale restaurant buzzed with Friday night energy. Keisha Montgomery pushed through the heavy oak doors, already dreading the evening ahead. Another one of Grandmother Evelyn's perfect matches. Another evening of pretending to be interested in some carefully vetted candidate who checked all the right boxes: right family, right education, right bank account. "Good evening, Miss Montgomery." The hostess greeted her with a practiced smile. "Your party is already here. Marco will show you to your table." Before Keisha could respond, a nervous-looking waiter appeared at her elbow. Marco was young, probably mid-20s, with the kind of anxious energy that suggested he was still learning the ropes of fine dining service. His hands fidgeted with the leather-bound menus he carried. "Right this way, please," he said, his voice slightly strained. Keisha followed him through the restaurant, weaving between tables of well-dressed diners. She barely noticed Marco's increasingly tense posture, the way his steps became more hesitant as they approached the back of the restaurant. "Here we are," Marco announced, his voice pitched slightly higher than normal as he gestured to a corner table, the best table in the house, secluded and intimate. And there he was. A striking Korean man sat with perfect posture, his tailored suit screaming expensive taste in that subtle way only true wealth could manage. Everything about him radiated controlled power, from the precise way he held his wineglass to the dangerous stillness in his bearing. His cold, calculating eyes swept the room with predatory awareness before settling on her, and something flickered in their dark depths. Recognition? Amusement. This had to be him. Another grandmother-approved suitor. Keisha steeled herself for the performance ahead, not noticing the way Marco backed away from the table with visible relief. She slid into the seat across from the stranger, ready to deploy her most obnoxious behavior. She had no idea she was sitting across from the wrong man entirely. She slid into the seat across from him with exaggerated carelessness. "You must be tonight's unfortunate victim," she announced loudly. "Fair warning, I'm rude, materialistic, and I only date men richer than my father. He's worth about 800 million. Can you compete?" The man's lips curved into an amused smile. Interesting opening. A waiter came and placed an appetizer on the table. Keisha attacked it with the delicacy of a starving wolverine. She had ordered the burrata, proceeded to demolish it with her mouth conspicuously open, making exaggerated sounds of pleasure that caused the couple at the adjacent table to exchange horrified glances. "Oh my God," she moaned loudly, strings of cheese visible between her teeth. "This is almost as good as the burrata I had in Positano." She looked up at Min-hyuk, her eyes deliberately critical. "You probably haven't been anywhere like that, right? I mean, no offense, but you have that, what's the word? Nouveau riche energy. Like you just figured out how to use a salad fork last year." Min-hyuk's eyebrow arched slightly, but his expression remained neutral, almost amused. "And what's with your suit?" Keisha continued, gesturing dismissively with her fork, flicking a piece of cheese that landed dangerously close to his plate. "It's trying way too hard. All that tailoring screaming, 'Look at me, I have money.' Real wealth whispers, 'Sweetheart.' This is practically shouting." She stuffed more burrata into her mouth, chewing obnoxiously. "My father wouldn't be caught dead in something so obvious." "Your father has excellent taste, I'm sure," Min-hyuk said smoothly, taking a measured sip of his wine. "Obviously, he's worth 800 million. Keisha leaned back, eyeing him up and down with theatrical disdain. "You're probably what? A few million? Maybe 20 if you're lucky? That's cute. That's like entry-level rich. Barely worth mentioning at the country club." She stood up and reached across the table without warning and grabbed a piece of bread from his plate, leaving crumbs scattered across the pristine white cloth. "Hope you don't mind." "Oh wait, I don't actually care if you mind." She bit into it sloppily. "You know what your problem is? You're trying too hard to look sophisticated. It's embarrassing, honestly. Like watching someone practice being rich in front of a mirror." Min-hyuk's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. Fascinating assessment. While Keisha launched into another insulting monologue about his haircut, Min Hyuk's phone buzzed. A text from his informant, "Tail can't make it. We'll contact when clear." He should have been furious. This meeting had taken weeks to arrange. But looking at this fearless woman across from him, deliberately trying to be terrible and somehow being charming instead, he found he didn't care. He typed back, "Understood. Stay safe." Then he silenced his phone and gave Keisha his full attention. "I know, right? I'm very perceptive." Keisha waved at him dismissively. "And your haircut, who did that? A blind barber? It's like they couldn't decide between businessman and boy band reject, so they just split the difference. How much did you pay for that disaster? Probably too much, knowing your type." "Your accent is weird too. Are you trying to sound more American? It's not working. You sound like you learned English from watching bad television. Very choppy, unnatural." "I'll work on that," Min Hyuk said, his tone infuriatingly even, amusement underneath. "You should." Keisha speared her salmon aggressively. "Honestly, I don't know what my grandmother was thinking setting me up with you. You're clearly not in my league." Keisha picked up her phone, scrolling through it while talking. She reached over, taking a sip directly from his water glass without asking. "Oops. Hope you don't have any gross diseases. Actually, you probably do. You look like the type who doesn't believe in regular doctor visits. Too masculine for preventive care, right?" The insults kept flowing, each one more cutting than the last, designed to drive any normal man away in offense or anger. But Min Hyuk just sat there, watching her with those dark, unreadable eyes and that slight curve to his lips that suggested he was somehow enjoying this verbal assault. And that calm, unshakable amusement in the face of her worst behavior, threw Keisha completely off balance. Men were supposed to leave. They were supposed to get angry, offended, defensive. They weren't supposed to look at her like she was the most entertaining thing they'd seen in years. "Your grandmother must be quite determined," Min Hyuk observed, his dark eyes glinting with something dangerous and magnetic as he studied her across the table. "You have no idea." Keisha's voice carried genuine exasperation now, the performance momentarily forgotten. "Evelyn Montgomery doesn't take no for an answer. Montgomery Enterprises might run half the city's real estate, but she acts like my love life is her personal project. I'm her legacy obsession, the granddaughter who needs to be properly settled with the right kind of man from the right kind of family." She rolled her eyes dramatically, "As if I can't manage my own life." What Keisha didn't notice, too focused on her complaints about her grandmother's matchmaking, was Marco the waiter, hovering near the kitchen entrance, practically vibrating with anxiety. His hands twisted the white cloth napkin he'd unconsciously grabbed, wringing it like he was trying to squeeze water from stone. Min Hyuk had recognized the mistake within 30 seconds of Keisha sitting down. Unlike his brother Jin Woo, who maintained a respectable public persona as a businessman, Min Hyuk was the shadow, the one who solved problems that couldn't be solved in boardrooms. He'd deliberately kept his face out of newspapers, avoided charity galas, operated in the dark spaces between legal and illegal. He'd seen Keisha's photograph dozens of times while vetting Montgomery properties for potential use. Several of her father's commercial buildings served as fronts for operations, though Jonathan Montgomery had no idea. The shell companies that leased his spaces had layers upon layers of corporate distance, but Keisha wouldn't know him. No one in legitimate society did. That was the point. Min Hyuk knew he should correct the error. His entire life had been built on control, calculation, eliminating variables. This woman was a variable, a beautiful, chaotic variable seated across from him by mistake. But here's what she didn't know. Min Hyuk was exhausted, bone-deep tired of the life he led. His parents' death had pushed him into the organization at 16, 20 years of violence, strategy, and isolation, 20 years of being the person everyone feared. And this woman was fearless. She insulted him, mocked him, treated him like he was ordinary. When was the last time anyone had done that? When was the last time someone had looked at him without fear or calculation? Just 10 minutes, he told himself. Let me have 10 minutes of being a normal man on a bad date. Then I'll correct the mistake, go home to my empty penthouse and return to the life I never chose. But 10 minutes became 20. 20 became 40. And somewhere, in her theatrical performance of terrible behavior, Min Hyuk made a decision that would change everything. He let the mistake continue. Miss Montgomery's actual blind date, a mild-mannered accountant named David, sat 3 tables away looking increasingly confused and checking his phone with growing frequency. The man had ordered a ginger ale and kept adjusting his tie, clearly nervous about meeting the prominent real estate heiress. He looked exactly like what he was, a nice, safe, grandmother-approved option. Meanwhile, at the corner table, the woman who should have been sitting with David was instead seated across from Park Min-hyuk. Park. Min-hyuk. Marco's hands trembled slightly at the thought. He'd been serving the man for 3 years, ever since the restaurant's previous owner had sold the establishment and the new investment group had taken over. Marco knew better than to ask questions about who really owned the place now. He'd seen enough, heard enough whispered conversations in Korean, noticed enough men in expensive suits conducting business that smelled of danger. This was Park Min-hyuk, who'd reserved the corner table for a confidential business meeting with an informant about port operations and shipping manifests. He'd realized his catastrophic mistake 20 minutes ago, the knowledge hitting him like a punch to the gut when he'd overheard David Chen asking the hostess if anyone matching Miss Montgomery's description had arrived yet, and felt his blood run cold. Oh God, he'd seated the Montgomery heiress with Park Min-hyuk. Marco should correct this. He should apologize, separate them immediately, seat Miss Montgomery with her actual date before this spiraled into something dangerous. Before Mr. Park realized the error and someone, probably Marco himself, paid the price for the incompetence. But then he looked at the corner table again. Min-hyuk was smiling. Actually smiling. His normally rigid posture had relaxed, shoulders easing back against the leather. Booth. The calculating hardness that usually inhabited those dark eyes had softened into something almost playful. In 3 years, Marco had never seen Park Min-hyuk smile like that, had never seen him look at anyone with that particular expression, part amusement, part fascination, part something else entirely that looked almost like wonder. Marco made a split-second decision born from equal parts cowardice and something that might have been romantic optimism. He backed away silently from the table, catching the eye of another server who was heading their direction. He shook his head sharply, mouthed, "Leave them alone," and retreated to the kitchen. Let the universe sort this one out. His conscience and his survival instincts could fight about it later. Somewhere between the main course and dessert, the performance crumbled. Keisha made a sarcastic comment about the couple at the next table taking photos of their food, and Min-hyuk actually laughed, a real laugh that crinkled the corners of his eyes. "You find that annoying too?" he asked, leaning back in his chair with genuine amusement. "I thought I was the only one who didn't understand the need to document every meal." "It's insane," Keisha said, forgetting to maintain her obnoxious persona. "Just eat the food. Experience the moment. Why does everything need to be performed for an audience?" "Says the woman who's been performing all evening," Min-hyuk observed, his tone gentle rather than accusatory. Keisha froze, then felt a genuine smile tug at her lips. Touché. The air between them shifted after that, becoming something warmer, more real. "So what do you actually do when you're not sabotaging blind dates?" Min-hyuk asked, his dark eyes curious and intent in a way that made her stomach flutter. "I paint," Keisha admitted, surprising herself with the honesty. "Terrible, abstract stuff that no one will ever see. I lock myself in my studio apartment. Yes, I have a secret apartment my grandmother doesn't know about, and just create. It's the only time I feel like myself." Min-hyuk's expression softened. "What do you paint?" "Emotions, mostly. Colors and shapes that represent feelings I can't put into words." She twirled her wine glass, watching the liquid catch the candlelight. "Last week I did this piece that was all deep blues and violent reds crashing into each other. I called it Family Dinner." His laugh was warm and genuine. "I would like to see that someday." "Would you?" Keisha met his eyes, searching for mockery and finding only sincerity. "Most people think it's a silly hobby, something I should have outgrown." "Art isn't something to outgrow," Min-hyuk said softly. "It's how we make sense of the world when words fail us." She felt her heart do something strange and unfamiliar. "Do you create anything?" "I cook," he admitted, and she caught a hint of self-consciousness in his expression. "Korean food, mostly. My grandmother's recipes. When I'm stressed, I make kimchi from scratch. The whole process, salting the cabbage, making the paste, the waiting, it centers me." That's actually beautiful, Keisha said, meaning it. Do you make it for people or just yourself? Mostly myself. He paused, then added with careful deliberateness, though I wouldn't mind cooking for someone who appreciated it. The implication hung between them, charged with possibility. What's your grandmother like? Keisha asked, genuinely curious. Mine is a force of nature who thinks she knows what's best for everyone. Min Hyuk's expression grew tender. Mine raised me after my parents died. She was fierce, protective, taught me that strength and gentleness aren't opposites. His voice dropped. She passed 3 years ago. I still find myself wanting to call her when something good happens. Without thinking, Keisha reached across the table and touched his hand. I'm so sorry. His fingers curled around hers, warm and solid. She would have liked you. Your fire. She always said the most interesting people were the ones who refused to be tamed. Keisha's breath caught. No one had ever described her that way, as interesting, as someone with fire worth preserving rather than extinguishing. They talked about music next. He loved jazz, the old stuff, Miles Davis and John Coltrane. There's something about improvisation, he explained, his voice passionate in a way that made him seem younger. The way musicians communicate without words, just feeling in response. I'm secretly obsessed with 90s R&B, Keisha admitted with a laugh. The cheesy stuff, Destiny's Child, Usher, all of it. I have a whole playlist I listen to when I'm painting. It makes me feel free. Secret playlist, Min Hyuk repeated, smiling. I like that you have secrets. Everyone should have secrets, Keisha said, things that are just theirs. They discovered they both loved thunderstorms, both hated small talk at parties, both had a tendency to overthink everything. He admitted he was terrible at asking for help. She confessed she was afraid of letting people see her vulnerable. Why? Min Hyuk asked gently. Because vulnerability is weakness in my world, Keisha said. Or that's what I've always been taught. Your world sounds exhausting. It is, she admitted, feeling something tight in her chest loosen. God, it really is. When dessert arrived, a delicate panna cotta neither of them had ordered, but both welcomed, they'd shifted closer without realizing it. Their knees touched under the table, and neither moved away. Keisha felt hyper-aware of everything, the way his eyes never left her face, the way he listened like every word mattered, the way her heart raced whenever he smiled. Their eyes met, and Keisha felt something shift fundamentally in her chest. This wasn't just attraction, this was recognition. Two people who'd been performing their whole lives finding someone who wanted to see the real person, underneath. When the check came, neither wanted the evening to end. Same time next week? Min Hyuk asked, standing to help her with her coat. His hands settled on her shoulders with such tenderness it made her throat tight. She leaned back slightly, letting herself feel the warmth of his presence. It's a date, Keisha said softly, then paused with a surprised laugh. Wait, that's literally what this was supposed to be. Min Hyuk turned her gently to face him, his hands still on her shoulders. The best kind, unexpected and real. Outside, the cool night air felt electric against her flushed skin. Min Hyuk walked her to her car, their hands brushing, neither quite ready to let go. At her driver's side door, he touched her cheek with careful fingers. Drive safely, Keisha. Her name on his lips felt like an endearment. She called Zara, her sister, before she'd even left the parking garage, her voice breathless and wondering. I think I just failed at failing. We talked for, hours, Zar, real stuff. He told me about his grandmother, his love of jazz, how he makes kimchi when he's stressed. I told him things I've never told anyone, and the way he looked at me. She trailed off, touching her cheek where his fingers had been. Oh, honey, Zara said knowingly. You're falling for him? We just met, Keisha protested weakly, and yet you're already planning what to wear next week. She was. She absolutely was. Maybe Grandmother Evelyn actually got one right for once, Zara teased. Keisha smiled, her heart full of something bright and terrifying and wonderful. Maybe she did. So what do you do? Keisha had asked on their second date. Import, export, some investment properties, Min Hyuk had replied, the standard cover story. Boring business stuff. Ugh, see, I knew it, Keisha had laughed. You have that corporate energy. My father would love you. You probably talk about market trends at parties. Min Hyuk smiled at the irony. If only she knew. The kind of importing his organization did, the kind of properties they managed. But she'd seemed satisfied with the vague answer, and he'd let her believe it. Every week he told himself he'd tell her the truth. Every week he fell deeper and rationalized one more date before the inevitable confession. Over the following weeks, Keisha continued meeting Min Hyuk, each encounter deepening the connection between them. They explored hidden corners of the city together, art galleries after hours, rooftop gardens at midnight, small family restaurants where Min Hyuk was greeted with respectful nods that Keisha found curious but didn't question. "Tell me about your family," Min Hyuk asked one evening as they walked along the river. "My mother passed 5 years ago," Keisha said with a sad sigh. Her hand tightened around his on the table. "Cancer. It was quick, 6 months from diagnosis to the end." Min Hyuk dropped his cup on the table. "I'm so sorry," squeezing back her hand. Keisha smiled sadly. "Well, there's my father. He built Montgomery Enterprises from a small property management company into a real estate empire. And then there's grandmother Evelyn, the family matriarch who thinks her greatest mission is getting me married." Keisha laughed. "And my baby sister Zara, she's only 3 years younger, but we're incredibly close. She's the only one who really gets me, the only one I can be completely honest with." "You're lucky," Min Hyuk said quietly. "Family like that is rare." "What about your family?" Min Hyuk's expression darkened. "I have a brother, Jin Woo. We're in business together. It's complicated." Keisha sensed walls going up and changed the subject, though she filed away the information. There was something Min Hyuk wasn't telling her, but she'd grown to trust the man beneath the mystery. Meanwhile, across the city, the nervous waiter had finally confessed his seating error to his manager, who'd gone pale, and immediately contacted Min Hyuk's organization. The message had reached Jin Woo Park, the true head of the syndicate, who'd been monitoring his younger brother's strange behavior with growing concern. Jin Woo sat in his office, reviewing surveillance photos of Min Hyuk and Keisha together. His brother, the cold, calculated enforcer who'd never shown interest in anything beyond the organization, was smiling. Actually smiling. "Find out everything about Keisha Montgomery," Jin Woo ordered his second-in-command, "and find out what my brother thinks he's doing." The truth crashed down on a rainy evening during what should have been Keisha and Min Hyuk's 6th date. Keisha arrived at the restaurant early and found the nervous waiter pacing near the entrance. "Miss Montgomery, I need to confess something," he stammered, the guilt having eaten at him for weeks. "The first night you came here, I made a terrible mistake. Your actual blind date was Mr. David Chen, the accountant. He was seated at table 12. Mr. Park was at table 7 for a business meeting. I accidentally seated you with the wrong person." Keisha's world tilted. "What are you talking about? What business meeting?" The waiter paled. "I shouldn't have said anything. Please, forget I mentioned it." But Keisha couldn't forget. Her hands shaking, she called Zara immediately. "He lied to me," Keisha whispered when her sister answered. "The whole thing was a mistake. He knew, and he never told me." "Slow down. What happened?" Zara's voice was sharp with concern. Keisha explained everything. The waiter's confession, the mix-up, the deception. "I need you to come home. Please, Z, I can't deal with this alone." "I'm booking a flight right now," Zara promised. "Don't do anything until I get there." But before Zara could board her plane, before Keisha could confront Min Hyuk, 3 black SUVs pulled up to the Montgomery mansion. Keisha was in the library with grandmother Evelyn, who'd been regaling her with stories of her own courtship days when their butler announced visitors. Miss Montgomery, there are several gentlemen here to see you. They're quite insistent." Min Hyuk entered first, his face grave. Behind him walked an older Korean man who radiated authority and danger in equal measure. 6 men in dark suits flanked them. Grandmother Evelyn, to Keisha's shock, didn't seem remotely intimidated. She set down her tea and studied the newcomers with the same assessing gaze she'd used to evaluate business deals for decades. "Min Hyuk?" Keisha's voice was cold. "I was just about to call you. Funny story. I found out tonight that our entire relationship started with a lie." "I know," he said quietly, "and I'm sorry. But right now we have a bigger problem." The older man stepped forward. "Miss Montgomery, I am Park Jin-woo, Min Hyuk's older brother. We need to talk about your safety." "My safety?" Keisha laughed bitterly. "From what?" "From me," Jin-woo said bluntly. "Or rather, from my enemies who think you matter to my organization." Keisha's father rushed into the room, having been summoned by the butler. "What's going on here? Keisha, are you all right?" "I'm fine, Dad," Keisha said, though her voice shook. Apparently, I've been dating a criminal without knowing it. Min Hyuk flinched. Keisha, is it true? She demanded. Is your business illegal? Yes, Jinwoo answered for him. I run the largest Korean syndicate in this city. Min Hyuk was my heir, my second in command. Was, because apparently he's decided to throw away everything for a woman he met by accident. The room fell silent. Keisha's father moved protectively toward her, but grandmother Evelyn remained seated, watching the exchange with sharp, calculating eyes. Tell me everything, Keisha demanded. Now, no more lies. Min Hyuk took a deep breath. That first night, I knew immediately it was a mistake. I'd seen your photo in the society. Pages! Your father's business has crossed paths with ours more than once, though he probably doesn't know it. I was there to meet an informant about a rival gang. You were supposed to meet David Chen, a boring accountant your grandmother chose. I was going to correct the mistake, Min Hyuk continued, but then you started talking and you were so fearless. You didn't know who I was and you didn't care. You treated me like a regular person. You tried to scare me off with terrible behavior, and it was the most genuine thing I'd encountered in years. So you lied. Yes, I kept meeting you, week after week, and somewhere along the way, I fell in love with you. Min Hyuk's voice broke slightly. You made me want things I'd never wanted before. A normal life, honesty, a future without violence. Jinwoo interrupted, his voice hard. And because he was careless, our enemies noticed. 3 rival organizations now have photos of you together. They think you're his weakness. They think they can use you to control or destroy our organization. The front door burst open, and Zara ran in, having caught an earlier flight and taken a taxi straight from the airport. She took one look at the scene, the armed men, her sister's pale face, their father's protective stance, and immediately moved to Keisha's side. What the hell's going on? Zara demanded. Keisha filled her in quickly, her voice shaking. Zara's arm tightened around her sister's shoulders. Jinwoo pulled out a folder, placing it on the antique side table. These are surveillance photos taken by 3 different organizations. You've been followed for the past 2 weeks, Miss Montgomery. So far, they're just watching, trying to understand your value to us. He spread out the photos. Keisha and Min Hyuk at cafes, walking through parks, standing close together on a street corner. In every image, their body language screamed intimacy. So what happens now? Keisha's father demanded. You've put my daughter in danger because your brother couldn't be honest? Now she chooses, Jinwoo said, his gaze softening as he looked at Keisha. I've spent the past 2 weeks investigating you, Miss Montgomery. I know you sabotage your grandmother's blind dates. I know you're frustrated with your family's expectations. I know you have a degree in sustainable urban development that you've never been allowed to use because your father wants you in traditional real estate. I know you and your sister video chat every night, no matter how busy you are. You investigated me, Keisha said flatly. Of course I did. A woman who could make my brother abandon everything he'd built deserved investigation. Jinwoo's expression became almost respectful. What I found impressed me. You're not just some spoiled heiress. You're intelligent, creative, and brave enough to deliberately tank dates by burping the alphabet just to maintain control of your own life. Despite everything, Keisha felt a surprised laugh escape. Beside her, Zara squeezed her hand. Grandmother Evelyn finally spoke. Mr. Park, the elder Mr. Park, you mentioned a choice. What choice? Jinwoo turned to face her, recognizing a worthy opponent. I'm offering Miss Montgomery 2 paths. First option, walk away now. My brother will be heartbroken, but she'll be safe. We'll spread the word that she meant nothing, that it was a brief, meaningless dalliance. Our enemies will lose interest. She can return to her life of sabotaged blind dates and family expectations. And the second option? Keisha asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to hear it. Stay, Jinwoo said simply. Accept that loving him means becoming a target. Let us protect you, but know that your life will never be normal again. You'll have bodyguards, your movements will be monitored, your family will be drawn into our world by association. Absolutely not, Keisha's father said immediately. Keisha, you're walking away from this, right? Now? But grandmother Evelyn raised a hand. Jonathan, let her speak. This is her choice. Keisha looked at Min Hyuk, really looked at him. She saw the fear in his eyes, the hope, the love he'd been too afraid to fully voice. She thought about the past weeks, the conversations that lasted until dawn, the way he listened to her dreams as if they mattered more than his own empire, the feeling of being truly seen for the first time in her life. Then she looked at her sister, her best friend, her partner in rebellion. Zara's eyes were wet with tears, but she nodded slightly. "Whatever you choose," that nod said. "I'm with you." "If I stay," Keisha said slowly, "what happens to Min Hyuk? Does he remain in your organization?" "No," Jinwoo said firmly. "If you stay, his retirement becomes non-negotiable. I won't allow you to be used as leverage against our operations. Min Hyuk will sever all ties. He'll be out, completely out." "And you can guarantee my family's safety?" "Yes, your father's business will receive our protection, though he'll never know the details. Your sister, your grandmother, all untouchable. Anyone who comes after them will face the full weight of my organization's retribution." Min Hyuk finally spoke again, his voice raw. "Keisha, you should walk away. Jinwoo is giving you an out. Take it. You deserve better than this." "Better than what?" Keisha asked. "Better than someone who sees me for who I really am? Better than feeling alive for the first time in my life?" "Better than a man who lied to you from the beginning," Min Hyuk said bitterly. "Better than a life where you'll always be looking over your shoulder." Keisha turned to her sister. "Z, remember when we were kids and you asked me what I wanted more than anything?" Zara nodded, tears streaming down her face. "You said you wanted to matter, not because of our last name or our money, but because of who you were." "I matter to him," Keisha said quietly. "Not Montgomery, the Heiress. Just Keisha, the woman who burps the alphabet and dreams about sustainable housing and sabotages blind dates." She faced Jinwoo directly. "I need promises from you, concrete ones." Jinwoo's eyebrows rose. "Name them." "First, Min Hyuk is completely out. No one last job, no emergencies, no pulling him back in. He's done." "Agreed. Agreed." "Second, Zara gets the same protection I do. She goes everywhere I go. We're a package deal." Zara gasped. "Keisha, you don't have to." "Yes, I do," Keisha interrupted. "I'm not doing this without you. You're my sister, my best friend. If I'm jumping off this cliff, you're the parachute I trust." Jinwoo smiled, a real smile that transformed his hard features. "You remind me of my mother. She had the same fire, same unwillingness to accept half measures." He looked at Min Hyuk. "She's too good for you, little brother." "I know," Min Hyuk said. Keisha's father grabbed her arm. "Keisha, think about what you're saying. These are criminals, dangerous people." "I know, Dad." Keisha covered his hand with hers. "But I'm choosing this with my eyes open. For once in my life, I'm choosing something that's completely mine. Not what the family expects, not what makes sense on paper, just mine." Grandmother Evelyn stood, moving with the regal grace that had intimidated business rivals for decades. She approached Jinwoo, studying him with sharp eyes. "Mr. Park, if I allow my granddaughter to make this choice, I need assurances. Your organization. Tell me about its financial structure. Are you diversifying into legitimate businesses?" Jinwoo blinked, thrown off balance for the first time. Yes, actually. Real estate, restaurants, import-export. I've been transitioning operations for the past 5 years." "Smart," Evelyn nodded. "Generational wealth requires legitimate foundations. Keisha, your young man here wants to retire from crime and run a restaurant. That's a solid business plan." "Grandmother!" Keisha gasped. "Oh, hush, child. I've lived 78 years in this city. You think I don't know how the world really works? I've seen good men do bad things and bad men do good things. What matters is character. And I've been watching Min Hyuk's face since he walked in here." Evelyn turned to him. "You love her, truly love her. That's rarer than all the money in our accounts combined." Min Hyuk met the old woman's gaze steadily. "More than my own life, Mrs. Montgomery." "Then we have an understanding." Evelyn looked at Jinwoo. "Your brother leaves your organization. Keisha and Zara get complete protection, and you keep your criminal activities far away from my family's legitimate businesses. In return, I don't call the FBI and report everything I've heard tonight." Jinwoo laughed, a surprised, genuine sound. "You would have been a formidable opponent, Mrs. Montgomery." "I still am, Mr. Park. Don't forget it." Keisha's father looked between his mother and his daughters, seeing he was outnumbered. "This is insane. All of it." "Jonathan," Evelyn said gently, "remember when you wanted to marry Elizabeth, and I thought she was too unconventional, too artistic, too free-spirited for the Montgomery family? But you loved her, and I let you choose. Give Keisha the same courtesy." "That was different," he protested weakly. "It's exactly the same. Love makes fools of us all. Evelyn patted his arm. Besides, I have a good feeling about this. Call it an old woman's intuition. Jinwoo pulled out a phone. I'll make the arrangements. Min Hyuk, you have 1 week to transition out of all operations. Miss Montgomery, Miss Zara, you'll each have a security team starting tomorrow. Discreet, professional. You won't even notice them most days. Where will we go? Keisha asked. We can't stay in the city if we're being watched. Grandmother Evelyn smiled. I have a suggestion. Asheville, North Carolina. My hometown. Beautiful mountains growing. Food scene. Far enough from here to be safe, but close enough to visit family. I still own property there, a lovely building downtown that would be perfect for a restaurant. Min Hyuk and Keisha looked at each other. In that shared glance, a whole conversation happened. Fear, hope, determination, love. A restaurant, Min Hyuk said slowly. I've always wanted to cook. My mother taught me her recipes before she died. Korean food, traditional dishes. And I've been researching sustainable urban development, Keisha added, excitement creeping into her voice despite the circumstances, including sustainable food systems. We could do farm to table, support local agriculture, create something meaningful. Zara jumped in. I'm getting my MBA. I could handle the business side while you two focus on the concept and kitchen. This is happening too fast, Keisha's father said, but his voice had lost its edge. He was watching his daughter's face light up with possibility, and he recognized the expression. It was the same one his wife had when discussing her art. Sometimes the best decisions happen fast, Grandmother Evelyn said. I decided to marry your grandfather after knowing him 3 weeks. We had 52 wonderful years together before he passed. Jinwoo cleared his throat. If we're doing this, we need to move quickly. My enemies are watching, and the longer we delay, the more dangerous this becomes. I can have everything arranged within the week. 1 week, Keisha repeated, to leave everything behind and start over. You're not leaving everything, Zara said fiercely, gripping her sister's hand. You're taking me. And honestly, I was getting bored with my master's program anyway. This sounds way more interesting. Keisha laughed, the sound slightly hysterical. My life has turned into a crime novel. A romance novel, Grandmother Evelyn corrected. With some thriller elements, much more exciting than those boring blind dates I kept arranging. Grandmother, you do realize that if your plan had worked, I'd be dating an accountant right now instead of running away with a former gangster. Darling, the waiter mixed up the tables. The universe clearly had other plans. Evelyn winked. I take full credit anyway. If I hadn't set up that date, you wouldn't have been at that restaurant. Min Hyuk finally crossed the room to Keisha, taking both her hands in his. Are you sure? Really sure? Once we do this, there's no going back. I sabotaged 6 blind dates trying to avoid exactly the life my family wanted for me, Keisha said, and then I accidentally walked into yours. Maybe the universe does have a sense of humor. Or maybe it just knew you needed someone who wouldn't run when you burped the alphabet, Min Hyuk said, a small smile playing at his lips. You're never going to let me live that down, are you? Never. Keisha turned to Jinwoo. We do this your way, 1 week, but I want regular updates on my family's safety. Monthly reports, detailed accounts. If anything threatens them because of me, I want to know immediately. You'll have direct access to me, Jinwoo promised. And Miss Montgomery? For what it's worth, any woman brave enough to choose this life has my utmost respect. You're stronger than you know. She gets it from me, Grandmother Evelyn said smugly. The next 7 days passed in a blur of activity. Jinwoo's organization worked with ruthless efficiency. A cover story was planted about Keisha and Zara taking a sabbatical to help open their grandmother's restaurant in her hometown. Min Hyuk systematically extricated himself from the syndicate's operations, transferring responsibilities and severing ties. Security teams were assigned, 4 men total, 2 per sister, who blended seamlessly into the background. Keisha barely noticed them most of the time, though she caught glimpses occasionally. A man reading a newspaper near the coffee shop, another jogging past. Her building, always present but never intrusive. Keisha's mother, Elizabeth, took the news better than expected. I always knew you'd do something unconventional, she said, hugging her daughter tightly. Just promise me you'll visit, and that you'll let me design the restaurant's interior. Deal, Keisha agreed. The hardest part was saying goodbye to her father. Jonathan Montgomery stood in his study, surrounded by decades of business achievements, looking at his eldest daughter with a mixture of pride and heartbreak. "I don't understand this," he admitted, "but I see something in your eyes I haven't seen in years. Purpose, drive, the same fire you had as a little girl when you told me you wanted to build houses for people who needed them." "I'm still going to do that, Dad," Keisha said, "just differently than you planned. The restaurant will be a start, sustainable practices, fair wages, supporting local farmers, and then, maybe one day, affordable housing projects in the community." "You're going to change the world," Jonathan said, his voice thick with emotion, "just like I always knew you would. I just wish it didn't require you leaving, and I wish your mother was here with us." Keisha signed sadly, tears blurring her eyes. "I think about her every day. I miss her so much." Jonathan squeezed her hand tightly. "I understand your concern, but Asheville's only a few hours away, and you're always welcome to visit," Keisha said, wiping her tears. He pulled her into a fierce hug. "I love you, sweetheart, even if I think you're completely insane." "I learned from the best," she said, nodding toward where Grandmother Evelyn was directing movers with military precision. On the final day, as Keisha and Zara loaded the last boxes into a moving truck, Jinwoo arrived personally to say goodbye. "The building in Asheville is ready," he told them. "Ground floor is the restaurant space. Second floor has been converted into a 3-bedroom apartment. For you 3. Security system is state-of-the-art, and your protection detail is already in place." "Thank you," Keisha said, "for everything, for letting him go." Jinwoo's expression softened. "Min-hyuk was never meant for this life. He stayed because of duty, because our father groomed him to take over. But he has a good heart, too good for what we do." He looked at her intently. "Make him happy, that's all I ask." "I'll try," Keisha promised. "And you," Jinwoo turned to Zara, "take care of your sister. She's brave, but bravery and wisdom aren't always the same thing." Zara straightened, meeting his gaze. "She's my best friend. I'd die before I let anything happen to her." "Let's hope it doesn't come to that," Jinwoo said dryly. "Oh, and Miss Montgomery? One more thing." He handed Keisha an envelope. "David Chen, your actual blind date, has been compensated for his confusion that night. I also ensured he received a promotion at his firm. Consider it an apology for the chaos we caused," Keisha laughed. "That's oddly thoughtful for a crime boss." "I prefer to think of myself as a businessman with unconventional methods," Jinwoo replied with a slight smile. "Now go, start your new life, and if you need anything at all, you have my personal number." The drive to Asheville took 6 hours. Min-hyuk drove, with Keisha in the passenger seat and Zara in the back, all of them quiet as they left the city behind. The 2 security vehicles followed at a discreet distance. "Nervous?" Keisha asked Min-hyuk as they entered the Blue Ridge Mountains. "Terrified," he admitted. "I've never done anything legitimate in my life. What if I fail? What if the restaurant fails? What if—" "We'll figure it out," Keisha interrupted. "Together. That's the whole point, right? We're building something new. No expectations, no predetermined paths. Just us and whatever we make of it." "Us," Min-hyuk repeated, reaching for her hand. "I like the sound of that." From the back seat, Zara made a gagging sound. "You 2 are disgustingly sweet. It's going to be a long year living with you." "You love it," Keisha teased. "I love you," Zara corrected. "The mushiness I tolerate." They arrived in Asheville as the sun was setting, painting the mountains in shades of gold and purple. The building Grandmother Evelyn owned was on a corner downtown, 3 stories of brick with large windows perfect for a restaurant. A small sign was already hung. "Serendipity, opening soon." "Serendipity," Keisha read aloud. "Grandmother's idea?" "She insisted," Min-hyuk said it was the perfect name for a restaurant founded on a beautiful mistake. They spent the first night in sleeping bags on the apartment floor, too excited to care about the lack of furniture. Zara fell asleep quickly, exhausted from the emotional week, but Keisha and Min-hyuk stayed awake, looking out the window at their new town. "Do you regret it?" Min-hyuk asked quietly. "Giving up? Your old life?" "I didn't give up anything," Keisha said. "I chose something better. There's a difference. I still can't believe you chose me, after everything." "You're the first person who ever saw me," Keisha said. "Not Montgomery the heiress, not Evelyn's granddaughter, not the girl who was supposed to marry well and manage the family foundation, just me. The real me. The woman who burps the alphabet to scare off suitors, Min-hyuk said solemnly. Exactly, Keisha laughed. Though I might retire that particular skill now. Please don't. It's one of your most charming qualities. They fell into comfortable silence, watching the stars emerge over the mountains. Min-hyuk? Thank you for being worth the risk. He pulled her close, kissing her forehead. Thank you for taking it. 6 months later, serendipity had become the talk of Asheville. The Korean soul food fusion concept, combining Min-hyuk's mother's traditional recipes with grandmother Evelyn's southern cooking secrets, had created something entirely unique. The restaurant's commitment to local sourcing and sustainable practices had won over the community, and reservations were booked weeks in advance. Keisha managed operations with fierce efficiency, while Zara handled the business side with MBA precision. Min-hyuk commanded the kitchen, teaching their small staff his techniques while constantly innovating new dishes. Grandmother Evelyn had relocated permanently to Asheville, taking an apartment in the building's 3rd floor. She spent her days holding court at the restaurant's best table, regaling customers with stories and basking in her successful matchmaking. I always knew I had a gift, she told anyone who would listen. My granddaughter tried to sabotage the date, but love found a way. Monthly visits from Keisha's father had become routine. Evelyn had indeed designed the restaurant's interior, a perfect blend of modern minimalism and warm, inviting textures. Even Jonathan had softened, especially after seeing the waitlist for reservations and reviewing the restaurant's impressive financials. Jinwoo visited occasionally, always alone, always bringing news that the city remained quiet. No threats had emerged. Min-hyuk's departure from the organization had been accepted as final. The former enemies who'd watched Keisha had lost interest when it became clear she was no longer connected to the syndicate's operations. On a quiet Tuesday evening, after the restaurant had closed, Keisha found Min-hyuk alone in the kitchen, testing a new recipe, a kimchi collard green fusion that represented everything they'd built together. Taste this, he said, offering her a spoon. The flavors were perfect, spicy and tangy, traditional and innovative all at once. It's brilliant, Keisha said, just like this whole crazy adventure. No regrets? Not even one. She meant it. The past 6 months had been the most challenging and rewarding of her life. They'd built something real, something meaningful, something entirely their own. Good, Min-hyuk said, setting down his spoon, because I want to make this permanent. He pulled out a small box, opening it to reveal a simple, elegant ring. Marry me, Keisha. Not because your grandmother arranged it, not because it makes sense on paper. Marry me because we chose each other, mistakes and all. Keisha's eyes filled with tears. Yes, 1,000 times yes. Zara burst through the kitchen door, clearly having been eavesdropping. Finally, I thought you'd never ask. Do you know how hard it's been keeping this secret? He bought that ring 2 months ago. You knew? Keisha laughed through her tears. Of course I knew. I'm your sister. I know everything. Zara hugged them both fiercely. I'm so happy for you. Both of you. The next morning, Keisha called her father with the news. Her father cleared his throat several times before managing to congratulate her, his voice suspiciously thick. Grandmother Evelyn simply smiled and said, I told you I was an excellent matchmaker. Grandmother, the waiter mixed up the tables. You had nothing to do with it. Details, darling. The universe worked through me. I'll take the credit regardless. The wedding was planned for the spring, a small ceremony in the mountains with only close family and friends. Jinwoo would attend, having been given the impossible task of walking Min-hyuk down the aisle since their parents were gone. As word spread through the small community of Asheville, the story became local legend. The wealthy heiress who sabotaged blind dates until the universe intervened, the former crime boss who found redemption through love and food, the restaurant that became a symbol of second chances. On a quiet evening, as Keisha and Min-hyuk walked through the town they now called home, she reflected on the journey that had brought them here. Do you ever think about that waiter? She asked. The one who made the mistake that started all this? Every day, Min-hyuk admitted. I sent him a very generous tip last month, anonymously, of course. Of course, Keisha smiled. The best mistakes deserve to be rewarded. We should hire him, Keisha joked. Don't even think about it. I'm not letting him near our restaurant. Who knows what chaos he'd cause? They walked in comfortable silence, passing shops closing for the evening, neighbors waving hello, the mountains standing guard in the distance. This was their life now. Simple, honest, earned. Keisha had set out to sabotage a blind date and ended up finding exactly what she'd been looking for all along. Someone who saw her, loved her, and was brave enough to build a completely new life by her side. Grandmother Evelyn, in her wisdom, had been right after all. Sometimes the best matches are the ones that happen by beautiful serendipitous mistake. And sometimes the greatest gift is having the courage to choose the unexpected path, to trust in love even when it makes no sense, to build something meaningful from the chaos of chance. Serendipity, indeed.